Hello guys, and welcome to Hell Let Loose Vietnam. Today I wanted to do a bit of an off-the-cuff, no script, talk about my first impressions, how I feel the game is, and what I got up to during the open beta this weekend. So I did manage to fly a helicopter, be the door gun of a helicopter, be the gunner on a boat, and to use all sorts of infantry weapons. So I think I got a good idea of how the game would play if it were to come out right now, and I just wanted to sort of talk about what I think could be improved and what I think is good about the game at the moment. So first of all, I think the visual fidelity is pretty good. The infantry models look good, the guns look good, the vehicles and such look good. The one thing that kind of lets me down is the foliage. I saw a lot of popping in and out as I was moving throughout the foliage, even like really up close. Some bushes would sometimes just appear in front of me out of nowhere. Draw distance is a bit of a problem, where you can see people out in the open, but when you get closer, the foliage pops in. I feel like for use of machine guns and like snipers, this is going to be like an advantage, especially when you're at long range. Could be quite frustrating to deal with if you're on the wrong end of it. But the guns sound really good, and I felt like the handling of the guns was reasonable. The machine guns, for example, they put out loads of smoke when you fire them, so it's kind of hard to keep track of a target if you're shooting at them, but I kind of like it because it means that, you know, machine guns aren't really strong, whereas your sort of smaller arms, your AKs and your M16s are much more reasonable in that regard and don't have as much recoil. It's much easier to track your target when you're firing, and they sound great. You get a little bit of feedback when you hit your enemy. There's sort of like a thud sound, and if you hit them in the helmet, you get the ting sound. I don't mind that because Hell Let Loose has always been a bit more of a sort of arcadey tactical shooter compared to something like Squad. Now, one thing that I felt really let the game down as I was playing was sound. I think the soundscape in general is really good when it comes to things being far away. So the sound of gunfire from afar, the helicopters flying around, but you don't really hear tanks, you don't hear footsteps, there's no rustling of the bushes as people are moving around, and I feel like in a game that's going to be very centered around jungle warfare, there really is a severe lack of sound design around soldiers moving about. And when you're in a jungle, the main thing that you have at your disposal is obviously your eyes. You're kind of trying to detect movement, and I think that side of thing is pretty good, like the shadows are done pretty well. But when it comes to sound, it's almost impossible to hear people. And if you were walking through a jungle, there would be like cracking of like the foliage under your feet, there would be like the brushing of bushes as you're moving past them, and there's absolutely none of that. Or so I noticed, at least. Maybe it's just not loud enough. Needs adjusting. Maybe they have those sound effects there, but you just can't hear them. The other thing that I noticed was when someone was firing a gun, like, I don't know, 20 feet away from me, it was really quiet. So it's very difficult to pinpoint where gunfire was coming from, even at a very close range. And I feel like the sound of enemy gunfire at close range needs to be a lot louder, so you can really pinpoint where the enemy's firing at you from. Because it makes no sense that it sounds like everybody's got suppressors on in a game where actual spatial sound is pretty good. Like, at a distance you can tell where people are, but up close it's actually much more difficult, which is very strange to me. It feels like the sound scaling as you get closer to the enemy is actually worse, and that kind of caught me off guard quite a few times when I was in close quarters combat. I would say overall though, when you're in the open and you're engaging enemy troops at close range, again, the movement and the gunplay feels really good. I do think that you move a little bit too fast when you're crouched. It really feels like you're zooming, and there was occasion where I was looking at an enemy and it seemed as though they were moving like unreasonably fast across the screen, because you can crouch sprint, and it feels like when you're crouching you're moving faster than when you're walking sometimes, which is a bit odd as well. So they definitely need to adjust the speeds at which infantry move around, but the vaulting felt pretty good. Being able to like traverse the environment was really nice. I didn't really have any problems with getting stuck anywhere, except from occasionally where an outpost was placed too close to another building and you kind of get stuck on top of each other in weird locations. But it never really stopped me from moving away, it just made it difficult to move away initially. Going back to sound, I did notice that I never knew when a tank was coming. The tanks are very loud in real life, and it was really strange to me that you couldn't really hear them. It was like, oh, someone's like, oh, there's a tank over there. I was like, well, I wouldn't have known because A, I can't hear it firing, and B, I can't hear the engine, which was really strange when it was, you know, only 100 meters away. So I think those kinds of things really do need adjusting in the game to make it feel more realistic and make the game easier to play just by sound, because everything else felt pretty good. Like when I was flying a helicopter, the controls are somewhat intuitive. I would definitely recommend like changing the control scheme to something more comfortable, but overall I didn't find it too difficult to jump in with the default controls into a helicopter and fly it around, so that was nice. And they have auto level, you can auto level then switch seats to drop off supply. I wouldn't recommend doing that on the front line because everybody and their nan has a rocket launcher, but it definitely was fun to fly around. And when I was playing as the door gunner, I was communicating with my pilot as to which side I was on with the guns, and it was really fun just like blasting and suppressing the ground forces whilst our team was trying to defend an objective. I will say though that it is very, very difficult to spot the enemy on the ground when you're in the helicopter, and also worse than that, it's harder to aim at them. But listening to the machine gun just blasting away while you're trying to mow people down is pretty awesome, honestly. I had a lot of fun with that. Whilst I was in the helicopter, I found that it was actually quite easy to be shot. Even if you just get wounded, you start bleeding out and then you're forced to land to bandage. But light arms fire is actually pretty effective against the helicopters, and I think that's actually a good thing, because they could be extremely impressive if it was difficult to take them down. They can actually survive a hit from an RPG from what I experienced, but maybe it depends where they get hit. By the way, quite easy to take them down if you put some concentrated fire towards them. I blasted a helicopter with my machine gun. I didn't have the unlock yet, where you can actually place down an anti-air machine gun, like a Dushka, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I was just using my standard RPD to spray the enemy helicopter, and it left because I probably killed the gunner, or you know, did some damage to the pilot or something, and he was forced to land. So it's nice that you kind of have that ability as a soldier on the ground to impact that anti-air gameplay. Now, taking a step back to the meta game, they obviously have the outpost system, commander system, all from the original Hell Let Loose, and that's all kind of nice. There is very in-depth tutorials that take you through all of that, and it was really nice to sort of sit through those, even though I knew not most of what was going on. I did go through all the tutorials, and there is a very robust tutorial system in the game, which I think is great, and more games should have tutorials like that. But yeah, with the commander system, pretty simple to use. I really liked on the NBA the tunnel system, where you can connect tunnels to the outposts to sort of fast travel around, and you can place tunnels like behind the enemy and then fast travel behind the enemy and pop up behind them and start shooting them in the back. That's really, really fun to do. Takes a bit of coordination, and it is quite easy to shut down. Like if the outpost gets taken out, then you lose all of the connections to the nearby tunnels, so that's a bit of a pain. But I do like the system, and I think as people get more used to it, it's going to become very, very useful. Because I did notice, for the most part, that the US was winning most of the games that I played. And I think that's just because people aren't familiar with the tunnel system yet, whilst the Americans get the helicopters, and that makes them very mobile and able to get around very quickly and take points very quickly. Whereas the NVA are very much reliant on those tunnels, and if they're not set up properly, then you can fall behind very, very fast, because you don't really have an easy way to get to the front line unless your team's super on point with outposts and such. As both sides, you do have the ability to place down structures. I felt like they weren't necessarily that useful. I mean, cover's plentiful in the map anyway, so like building a bunker or a sandbag wall or barbed wire even for the most part felt like a bit of a waste of time. But it's still cool to have that option, and there was an objective in particular where I saw it was on the bridge. I feel like putting barbed wire on each end of the bridge could be really helpful to secure that, which would be nice. But getting there and building it is another matter entirely, because not only do you need supply, the build time is actually pretty long, and I think they could probably reduce the build time a little bit on the engineers just to make it so that it's a bit more viable. Because often you don't have time, particularly when objectives change, to build up more defenses, for example, on the next objective. There's no real cooldown in between the objectives, and therefore, you know, the battle just continues, and you're a poor engineer just trying to build like a barricade for, 20 seconds on the ground, and it's plenty of time for somebody to just run up on you and take you out. I guess in theory, what you might be supposed to be doing is building up your defenses on the next objective back preemptively, but then you're kind of missing out on a lot of the fun on the front. And I think that's also a reason why I didn't see anybody using the mortars throughout the game. All of the sessions I played, no one was using mortars. I did mess around with mortars a bit in the tutorial, and they seem pretty intuitive to use, so that's nice. But ultimately, I think a lot of people would just be bored using them. It may be worth the devs thinking about introducing sort of maybe smaller mortars that are more like handheld. I mean, you already have the grenade launcher, and I'm not sure if the Americans were using like a 60mm mortar or like a 50mm mortar during the Vietnam War, but it might be more fun to be doing that rather than sitting 500 meters behind the front line with a mortar, an 81mm mortar, hoping that your commander's pinging stuff and your team's pinging stuff. It's very reliant on team play, and I feel like the game in general is extremely reliant on team play, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're playing on public servers, everybody knows that the medics aren't picking you up most of the time, and people are quite often not on comms. And a lot of the equipment, like the tanks, the helicopters, they require you to have that second man or a couple more people to really make them effective. And that's one issue that I think that Hell Let Loose has never really locked down. In a game like Squad, everybody's required to have a mic, mostly by the server owners. They're going to kick people if they don't have mics in a squad commander role. If you're just a regular soldier, then that's fine, but if you're taking a vehicle and you don't have a microphone, then you're going to get kicked out of that server. Whereas in Hell Let Loose, it's way more casual, and I don't think it would necessarily benefit the game to be that stringent. But maybe they could introduce some sort of mechanic where, unless you have an active microphone, you can't make a squad for vehicles or something like that. You can still join them, but you can't actively start one. Let me just sum things up. Overall, I think the game was very pretty. It was somewhat fun to play. I really liked all of the tools at your disposal. I mean, there's plenty of things to unlock, like, rocket launchers with the RPG and the M72. You can get flamethrowers. There's shotguns, all sorts of cool stuff. So plenty of content, and it's all behind an unlock system, so it's going to encourage you to play more. But my biggest issue with the game throughout the open beta was definitely sound. Spatial awareness is so important in jungle warfare, and not having sound cues from, again, bushes being pushed around, footsteps, all this kind of stuff. It's super, super important to make the gunplay feel good. And at the moment it seems to be severely lacking. Movement needs tweaking, particularly like crouching and moving really fast while you're crouching. It's really silly. But otherwise, I can see a lot of people having fun in the game. For me, the Vietnam setting has always been a difficult one for me to enjoy because of the visual clutter and the lack of feedback. And Hell Let Loose Vietnam is just another example of that, particularly in the soundscape. Would I recommend giving it a go if they have another free weekend? Absolutely. If you enjoyed the original Hell Let Loose, you'll probably love Hell Let Loose Vietnam. But do I think it's a high enough quality for me personally to enjoy? Probably not for now. I'm really interested to see what they're going to try between open beta and, I guess, release, or if they're going to do another open beta beforehand. But that's all my thoughts for now. I was asked if I would play this a lot throughout the weekend, so I thought I'd give it a go and make a video about my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.